Honestly, I'm seeing things a lot clearer. It seems that as I read this book, I think you'd agree that reasons begin to appear for everything, for the big C, for the big V, for so many things, for abortion. It seems like in 76, I was born in 53, 76, I wish I'd have been paying attention to this. But at any rate, I'm reading here in The World of Tomorrow an article, and I don't want to make this long because I hate to listen to boring things, but the article is called Looking into the Future, and it's a conversation with science writer Isaac Asimov. And I've got lots of his books here. He's great. He knows science and academically. But, so in the beginning of this article, it talks about that prophets have been forecasting the end of the earth. And he says, yes, someday, millions of years from now, the sun will eat the earth and we will have a problem. And so, but he says, but before that, the earth's resources will be exhausted. What we might need to do is capture a wandering asteroid and convert it into a huge spaceship on which we will set off to find inhabitable planets. Okay, this is 76. Then he starts talking about, before that happens, there are all kinds of technological things that need to happen. And why can't someone find us? He says, because we're so far away. The most logical way to help ourselves when the planet is inhabitable is to hollow out small asteroids, convert them into, and supply them with whatever they're short of. So hollow out small planets or asteroids and convert them, supply them what they need, and then colonize other worlds, kind of like they colonized us. Okay, so how long would the journey be? He says, well, you might have to discard one asteroid and take on a new one. Okay, so how feasible is all this? How about the speed of travel? Light is the fastest thing known in the universe at 669 million miles an hour. That's another number thing. Just as there is a sound barrier, there seems to be a light barrier. How long will these journeys take? And he goes, as long as the speed of light limit lasts, we cannot expect to communicate between the stars in any way now. But if we sent some ship to the stars by any present system, it would take years to reach the nearest, Proxima Centauri, thousands of years. The only hope of doing anything about this is if there's some way of going faster than the speed of light without breaking the theory of relativity, which seems to correspond to the universe as it is. Okay, well, we know there's some questions there. For instance, scientists now theorize that there are some kind of particles called tachyons that go way faster than the speed of light. They've not actually been detected, but if they do exist, they'll be extremely difficult to detect. However, if we can speculate on the possibility of changing all the particles in a spaceship simultaneously into the corresponding tachyonic particles, taking off at many times the speed of light in an appropriate direction for an appropriate distance, and then suddenly turning everything back into ordinary particles. There you are. No time lapse. Practically until you're at the end of the galaxy, 120 trillion miles away. Of course, the engineering problems involved in changing all the particles in the ship, including those of the humans, into tachyons, so that you don't come back missing half your heart or just enough atoms to spoil things for you, are enormous. You say the Earth will probably last another 10 billion years. Will mankind also survive that time, or will we blow ourselves up? That could happen any time, except that the longer it does not happen, the more I believe it will not. We have had opportunities for nuclear war, and we have avoided them. Could the Earth be destroyed in a collision with another planet or huge meteor? It's highly unlikely. Space is largely empty. Blah, blah, blah. In fact, the stars in our galaxy are in the same proportion as would be a few grains of sand in the whole of New York Central Park. So then another question, what about a possible invasion and annihilation by people from elsewhere in the universe? That's a very well-known science fiction situation, but seems unlikely. The nearest intelligence to us is likely to be as much as 50 light years away, and that's not easy. What then are the dangers that you are seeing in mankind? I think it extremely unlikely that mankind could ever be wiped out completely, but unless we take firm action now immediately, 1976, I believe that we could destroy civilization as we know it within 30 to 50 years. We are headed rapidly in that direction. That seems an alarming idea and an alarming short space of time. Well, that's how desperate things are. At the present moment, the population of the world is higher by far than it's ever been. It's about 4 billion compared with 2 billion only 50 years ago. It's doubled in the past 50 years and will double again, barring some new control in the next 35 years. So we are having trouble feeding people. A substantial portion of mankind is in constant danger of starvation. By the year 2009, we are going to have somewhere between 7 and 8 billion people on the earth, and we're not going to double our food supply by then. Sorry, my dog and husband came in and I got sidetracked. Okay, by the year 2009, we're going to have somewhere between 7 and 8 billion people on the earth, and we're not going to double our food supply by then. This means that within 30 to 50 years, famines may have become all too common. Okay. What I thought about, I don't know if this is the right time to break, but what I thought about is that if this were indeed the situation, when you're talking about real food, food from the garden, vegetables, fruit, meat, right? If that's the situation, and we were going to run out of food, that's why we're eating all the junk. That's why they didn't have any problem with the commercialism. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt here, but I can certainly see where there was a real need to create some new foodstuffs that would last. Now, I'm not saying that they should have created the crap, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't have told us. But another thing, think about abortion. I've always been against abortion, and yet There have been many instances when it might have been the better way out, but I believe in life as being sacred. But think about this. Did they allow abortion and push it because of this population problem that was so obvious and evident? But they kind of threw it out there, but no one knew what the heck was going on. Some people thought there was too little people. Some thought there were too many. But the problem was the type of people. Okay, anyway. So you can kind of see how things have sped along. In addition, a great many people ill-nourished, there would be an increase in disease. And economically, they would not be self-sufficient. Okay, so he says, I know it's very complicated, but the history of mankind has been one of advancing technology. Think of the Dark Age in Europe between 5th and 11th century as being enormous, but it was really very local. The only reason we pay attention is because we are like Western European. Actually, the Byzantine Empire was flourishing, and the Arab world was at its cultural height. And there was a brilliant civilization flourishing in Spain throughout the Dark Ages. Some of them weren't there. There's a whole lump of years that I don't think ever happened. So it was just in the Frankish Empire that there was a Dark Age. In fact, when Europe started climbing out of its Dark Age, it was because it got rays of civilization from the rim. But if our technology is going, then we are going to have a Dark Age that for the first time will be worldwide. There will be no untouched portion to act as the savior for the rest. It would come after we burned up the oil, used the easiest supplies of coal, scattered the best pockets of minerals, rendered part of the environment radioactive, and destroyed a great deal of Earth's soil by over-farming in desperate attempts to feed the population. But what of new sources of power and new sources of food? Well, that's possible. We're trying to learn how to get more food from the ocean, and solar energy is another principal way of power. Is there no hope that another part of the universe would help? And he says, I think the crisis is coming much too soon. I would say that a person who is now 20, this is in 1976, will see the crisis while he's in the vigor of his life. Rescue by some superintelligence is possible, but frankly, if that happens, life might not be worth living. Well, I didn't mean for this to be so yucky, but okay, have we then any right to feel optimistic? And the guy says, yes, for it's amazing how fast human beings can change given pressure. Only 20 years ago, birth control was banned in vast areas, and now it's helping to keep the size of population under control. Perhaps as the death rate starts to go up, it will dawn on people that the birth rate must come down. But surely this would take a worldwide agreement of a kind that's never been managed before. Yes, that's true. But the fact is, we're facing global problems, declining resources, rising population, pollution, and so on. And it's very clear that no nation is an independent unit. It's very clear that war is impossible, not only nuclear war, but any ordinary war. We can solve the population problem, however, building a civilization on a philosophy of growth in quality, growth in sophistication, growth in new forms of technology. If we can do that, we might have the capacity to be enormously, enormously wonderful. The problem is, this was written in 1976 and I ain't seen it. Sorry, I'll be back with some good news later.